All right, malaria still constitutes a serious public health problem in Nigeria, despite the control effects of which insecticide treated nets is part of what was introduced in this nation to help in the fight against malaria disease. In the studio this morning, I have some gentlemen that are of the health sector in Anambra State. They are going to help us to actually talk about insecticide treated nets campaign in Anambra State. I have with me pharmacist Nonso Ndibe. Nonso Ndibe is the program manager, State Malaria Elimination Program. Welcome to the studio, Nonso.
Thank you, Anambrarians.
All right, Nonso is going to help us to look at the how they are going to go about the distribution of insecticide treated nets in Anambra State that will soon kick off. And I want to let us know that some people, despite these nets have been shared over the years, some people are still not comfortable sleeping under these nets. Nonso is going to explain to us all that we need to know and understand about insecticide-treated nets against malaria. Now, Nonso, can you give us an overview, actually, of what the insecticide-treated nets, what's the overview of what you're about, the campaign you're doing in Anambra State recently?
Thank you, the Anambra. Actually, in malaria control, in controlling malaria, there's an arm of malaria control that we call vector control, which is targeted at the vector. When I mean vector, I mean the agent that carries the malaria parasite, which is the mosquito. So vector control is aimed at reducing as many or fighting the carrier of the malaria parasite, the mosquito. To be specific, the female Anopheles mosquito. So now, going to the next campaign, the WHO has recommended that to achieve universal coverage, that the vector control method that is most suited for this our area, especially sub-Saharan Africa, that can reach a wider group of people within a shorter period of time, is actually the use of what we call insecticide-treated nets. By insecticide-treated nets, I mean nets that are embedded with insecticides. So the net campaign, like I said, is usually done in a statewide, takes a statewide form. The last time we did, let me just give a small history. The Anambra was one of the first states that was used as pilot for the net campaign during the World Bank Booster Project in 2009. 3 states actually benefited from that. Anambra was one of the 3 states. And since then, we've done a replacement campaign in 2014. And right now, 8 years down the line, we are doing another. It actually should be, according to national guideline, net campaign should hold every 3 years. But due to some funding issues, but we thank God that right now, we've been able to secure funding. And we are doing this net campaign around the state. So by the name campaign, it means that we carry out a lot of sensitization. Before now, on the 8th of June, we had the Executive Governor of the Anambra State, Professor Chukwumacha Soludo, carry out a flag off, and even his wife had to demonstrate, the First Lady of the state. She not only demonstrated how to use the net, sleep inside the bed with cover with nets, she also was the net ambassador of the state. So being the net ambassador, she is the face of the net campaign in the states. So this campaign, like I said, is actually an important way we scientifically proven around the world that reduces drastically the mosquito, that's the vector, reduces the population drastically. But this campaign this year is different from the last one carried in 2014. Because in 2014 we used paper, but now it's totally ICT based. We have a team that is attached to the campaign. Because this campaign this year is being implemented by the Malaria Consortium. So we have an ICT 4D attached to it. So the people that are going to the field, we won't be seeing them going with paper. they'll be going with devices. So each household, they knock on each household, they take some data, and then they give out the nets. These devices will be used to track. So we'll be tracking real time these nets as they are going. Actually, I don't know whether that is going beyond your question, but this campaign, distribution phase, is supposed to start from 7th to 17th of August. So we actually started on Sunday. We did the first test run on Sunday, and it was actually a success. We went throughout the 21 LGAs, households, so we are covered. But maybe as time goes on, we elaborate on that.
All right. Now, we all know that a lot of countries, developed countries of the world, have eradicated malaria from their countries. And I don't know actually how they did it. But in Nigeria, we see that malaria is still our major problem, despite the fact that this nets distribution started since 2008, 2009 in Nigeria. There is supposed to be reduction in the cases of malaria, but the reverse seems to be the case. You know, what do you think it's the problem? Does it mean the insecticide-treated nets cannot, only insecticide nets cannot take care of the problem itself? Tell us.
Okay, let me give an example. I think Sri Lanka, one of these countries that was declared malaria-free some few years ago by WHO. Like I said, to eradicate malaria, what the approach is vector control, like I mentioned earlier. And it's not a one-sided approach. Okay. We have various approaches that are targeted towards the mosquito. You know, net campaign is just one arm of, of vector control. We have what we call IRS, indoor residual spraying. Okay. We also have what we call environmental management and environmental manipulation, environmental management, where we, like currently what Anambra is doing now, where we clean up the gutters, you know, remove stagnant water, because now is rainy season. Usually during rainy season, the malaria cases peak. Okay. The reason is that simply because the female Anopheles mosquito prefers to lay eggs on clear water, clear stagnant water. And you usually see that more during the rainy season. So yes, the cases are actually climbing worldwide. Last year we had over 212 million cases, according to the World Malaria Report from WHO, which was actually a slight increase from the previous year. But of course, according to WHO, the head of WHO in the world, he attributed the surge to the COVID-19, which actually disrupted some services. Okay. You know, but even at that, the cases have been, not that they've been increasing exponentially, but they've been, plateauing. But coming back to your question, why the cases are increasing, there are many reasons. Like I mentioned, the nets are just one arm. And again, even when you talk about the nets, if we check the last National Malaria Indicator Survey that was carried out, and even the last National Demographic Health Survey 2018, we found that the problem we have is not actually net ownership. Okay, when we get to, okay.
Hello? Hello? Good morning. Your name and your location, please.
Miss Amos from Benefit.
Speak up, please.
I'm from Benefit, Amos.
Okay, Amos, go ahead and make your contribution.
Okay, well, I've heard what the man is saying about the mosquito and malaria and the rest. You know, in this country, we have problems, a lot of problems that is going on in this country. You know, in this country, you have these big men, these politicians. They promise and promise and promise. Maybe I'm giving an example now. Go to U.S. What's happening in the U.S. But in Nigeria, if you go to U.S., you see a fleet everywhere. You fleet the place, the country. So that we have this money. We have this money. Let's just forget about other things. Let's forget about people are saying we don't have money. We have this in this country. We can do everything possible to cure this malaria and the rest. So let's say the truth. Let's forget any other thing. Let's say the truth. We have the money to bring out the chemicals to finish everywhere, especially in Nigeria. We have this money. Let's say the truth.
All right, thank
you. Let the truth.
Amos, your contribution is that government should fleet every environment.
Let them fleet the country.
Okay.
Let them fleet the country. We have this chemical. The chemical is there.
Okay. Thank you for your
contribution. We are suffering. We are suffering.
All right. Thank you for your contribution. All right. Amos' contribution brings me to there's this lawmaker in Anambra State sometime in Fege. The man came out before, I think during election period. So he fleeted a particular area in Fege, and the residents of Fege said that mosquito did not bite them for 3 months. And I was like, if this could happen in a community, you know, when we do it often from time to time, don't you think it's going to help complement the insecticide treated net so that when you distribute your nets, it's not going to be a waste?
That was what I was trying to get to that, because it's actually a synergized, is a group of actions you take. You don't take individual, maybe that only nets. Like I said, it's vector control. Vector control is an entire different branch in malaria. So like I was saying, the nets, the issue we're having is even the fact that when you want to check like after this net campaign, we're going to have a survey. We already carried out a survey, baseline survey. After this, okay.
Hello. Go ahead.
So like I said, what we discovered is that usually our net ownership is high, but people don't actually use those nets, sleep in those nets. Currently, I think the southeast, Anambra, people, you find out you can have a net ownership as high as 80%. At the end of the day, when you now do the survey, you find out people that even sleep inside it are about 30-something%. So what we need to do, as far as nets are concerned, is to enlighten people more, do a lot of interpersonal communication, behavioral change communication, SBC, social behavioral change communication, to ensure that people actually know the importance of sleeping inside these nets. But even going beyond that, like I mentioned, is a group of actions taken. The insecticide nets, the strategy, the indoor respiratory spraying strategy, where people we actually carried it out last in 2016 with funding from the Federal Ministry of Health, where we went into houses to actually spray insecticide on the inner walls. And I bet you, any house that is done, for the next 6 months, you won't have mosquitoes there, because any mosquito that settles on the wall will die. And again, we have the one I mentioned now, environmental management. You can never do without that, because for areas like Ekpoko, you mentioned, Ekpoko is a highly populated area.
Okay.
Yeah, like I said, Ekpoko is a highly populated area. So no matter what you do, you need to also take care of the environment. We always say that as part of our messages. Even though our focus now is on net campaign, but looking at it in totality, if we carry out everything that we should do to ensure that following the guidelines, we know that we will see that the population of mosquitoes are decreasing. The problem is that we need to, our people need to also be educated on what to do. Like the slogan for World Malaria Day this year was zero malaria starts with me. So there's something you can do on your own as an individual to stop malaria. Around your environment, what are you doing? Are you making sure that, like I said, you are in rainy season, making sure that there are no stagnant water around, clearing your area, maybe these grasses and stuff, because the pellets of water used to accumulate on grasses, and malaria, mosquito can grow there, and other things. But like I said, the net distribution campaign has been proven to be one of the major vector control methods. It's not as if it's the only one, but it is the only one that we can use to, because for IRS, indoor respiratory spraying, you can only get to as much, you won't be able to get to so many households as you want, because one, The process is quite expensive. You need to buy equipment, buy the chemicals, train people, pay consultants. But even the chemical that they are spraying on the wall is still the same chemical that is in this nets that we are distributing. And again, to reiterate, the nets we are distributing this year is different. You know, there's something we are trying differently this year. It's not the same nets we distributed in 2014. Okay. Okay.
Go into that. The program is Good Morning Anambra, talking about insecticide treated nets campaign in Anambra State. At this point, we are going to take a short break. Let's bring you the street walk. The program returns shortly. Please join us again.
The blockage of most drainages with plastics and waste helps breeding of all these pathogenic substances. So the government has to have a way of cleaning the drainages. Of course, I know it should be in partnership with the people. So when drainages are clean at that level, it will reduce the breeding of all those pathogens. Then at family level too, residents should be able to clean their houses and the surroundings, and by that, it will reduce the breeding ground for malaria and the rest of it. So mosquito, which leads to the malaria.
Malaria is a very common disease in sub-Saharan Africa, especially Nigeria here. So it's always common. It's not something that, because often at times, most people, in a year, they must have a bout of malaria. Well, you have anti-malaria drugs that takes care of it. Well, for me, I usually go for lab. But malaria has symptoms, so if anytime I develop certain symptoms that are related to malaria, I usually go for lab and treat myself with anti-malaria drugs. In Western countries, the environment is quite different from here. So, and I think it's a cold region too. So malaria cannot survive in a cold region. So these are I think the environment factors are the major cause.
I normally have malaria maybe a 3 months interval. So when I have the symptoms, which is weakness, slight headache, I will rush to the pharmacy and buy drug. Anyone they prescribe for me, I don't have any particular one I'm taking. So anyone they prescribe for me, I will buy. Then I will also treat my children. I don't need to see the symptoms in them. I will just treat them maybe 3 months, sometimes 2 months, depending on how the mosquito bite was that time. I noticed that if I go for immunization, they normally give us a mosquito net. The government, I think, is a good one. But sometime now I noticed that when I went for my last baby's immunization, they did not give me that. So that their mosquito net is going a long way because it's treated and you find out that it's attracting mosquitoes. Just attract them and hold them. So it's a good measure. And if they should also give us drugs, the government now, or they will reduce the prices because these malaria drugs, they are high when you go to pharmacies. Not everybody that can afford it.
I don't even have malaria. The reason is that I drink a lot of water, and water have a cleansing action on the system, overall system of the body. By the time you drink a lot of water, you won't have any malaria at all, talk less of treating it. When you drink water, the volume of water you drink will now prevent you from having malaria. Right now, I have taken 3 sachets of water. And maybe before the day runs out, I'll take about 6 sachets, making it 9. Government will give enlightenment campaign, just moving around through radio, television, and in the media, through the media. Enlightenment campaign that will stop it. Thereafter, if they have government hospitals, they can subsidize the cost of buying drugs for those who cannot afford to drink water.
All right, we have the views of people on the streets as they talk about what they do to help them fight malaria on individual level. And what's your reaction, especially to the last man that said that it takes water very often? That's why it doesn't suffer from malaria.
Thank you. Some of the comments were actually interesting. It still goes back to what we are saying about educating our people. You know, right now we're not even still talking about them sleeping inside net. Apart from that, they need to also know what malaria is, because they say knowledge is power. If you know, le permit to speak Igbo, oh, malo febo malaria, so if you know what malaria is, because a lot of us think other things that are not malaria. Just like when COVID-19 came, people were saying so many things, you know, but later on it was proven that is the SARS-CoV-2 virus, you know, that which was COVID-19 that actually causes that illness. So the same with malaria. It has been scientifically proven that it is only the bite of a female, infected female Anopheles mosquito that gives you malaria. And how does it transmit? When they bite you, they transmit what we call a plasmodium into your system. We have about 4 or 5 species, but the one that troubles us most in Africa is Plasmodium falciparum. So when that plasmodium goes to your liver, I don't want to start wasting our time, but I just want to give an overview. It's from the liver, it starts spreading to the bloodstream. At that point, that's when you start having fever, rigors, and all that. When the merozytes, because from sporozoite stage, it goes to merozytes, and from liver, it comes out. At that point, when they start attacking red blood cells, because when they come out from your liver, they start attacking your red blood cells. It's at that point that you start having fever, chills. Okay? So basically, what the ACTs do, we call them artemisinin combination therapy. What those drugs do, when you take them, they actually go into the blood to attack those parasites, the merozytes. That is why if you take it most of the time, notice that after some hours, your fever drops and all that, because they are killing those parasites in the blood. So basically, that is the only thing that causes malaria. So for the person that is saying that he drinks water and all that, fine, drinking water in the morning is good though. It will only help you, for instance, liver and your kidney. You know, medical people used to say that one of the ways to prevent kidney disease is to drink water. Yes, because it helps because the liver is what detoxifies the system, even the kidney also detoxifies the system. So back to malaria. There's no other thing that causes malaria that is not the plasmodium in your system. So I've heard some people say too much sun, too much oily food, witchcraft, all sorts of things. If that plasmodium is not in your blood, you can never have it. You cannot manifest. It's not malaria. That's why even when you go to lab, when they go for tests, the lab people looks through the microscope. What he sees is not parasites. Is what you now say. Okay, you have seen the parasite. That is what you now determine and write in the result that this person has malaria. Because there are so many things that causes fever. There are over 100 causes of fever. Let me not even talk of other. There are so many. You have typhoid. You have yellow fever.
Let's go down to the saying that prevention is always better than cure, which is, I think that's what the campaign is all about. Yeah. The distribution of insecticide, the treated nets. Tell us, in Anambra State, you've said it's beginning. Okay, it has already begun on the 7th. On 7th of 7th. August, and yes, to end on the...
On 17th.
Okay, tell us, how families or communities, how are you people going about it? Is it every community, every family in Anambra State is going to get a net or two? And how are you people going to ensure that every family that needs net gets net?
So the people that are going, like I mentioned earlier, they are going to go with devices. So we are going to see a team of 3 people. We have what we call a mobilizer, who is going to be the person that's going to ask the question. We have a distributor who will hand you over the net, and then we have one other person. So the strategy is door to door, unlike what we did in 2014.
Okay, door to door.
Door to door, single phase approach.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning. Who is here? Who?
Amos.
Okay, go ahead, Amos.
I still called back.
Okay.
You know, when they share this net, the net, when they share this net, some people don't know how to treat it in the net. Like all I need is to give me the net, but don't wasting the net because I won't sleep inside.
Why?
Because when your body touches that net, in fact, you see as if you are sleeping in there. And again, maybe you sleep under the net. When you sleep under the net, maybe for a while, you see the heat that will come out from that net. In fact, you will not believe it. I don't know whether it's a chemical. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I say, let me call back again.
All right.
But to start another method, there are many methods that they will do that all these things will run away.
All right. Thank you very much.
Are doing it. Let's do it.
Okay, thank you very much, Amos. Thank you for calling again. You know, you've seen the part of the challenge we talked about earlier. Some people are not comfortable sleeping under these insecticide-treated nets. So what's your take? What do you tell them? You know, or is there any difference in what they have already with what you are going to distribute in Anambra State?
Now, thank you for the question. Like I said, the net is actually embedded with chemical and insecticide. But the one we're even using now is different from the one we used 8 years ago. It's like a second generation net. So it's embedded with not just an insecticide, but an enhancer. That because over the years, these mosquitoes, they adapt. Even the parasite adapts. That's why after a while, chloroquine stopped working. After a while, fancida stopped working. So the same way the parasite adapts, that is the same way the mosquito also adapts in terms of being resistant to the insecticide. You know, so this time around, we've enhanced. The net is, like I said, it's a second generation. It has an enhancer that makes the mosquito more susceptible to the insecticide. That when it perches on it, within some moments, it will die or it will get weak. So what we advise people to do, and what we have always advised people to do, is you don't just bring this net and hang it and start using. You know, that's why, like Mr. Amos mentioned, some people will enter inside the net. When they touches them, it starts irritating them. The simple reason is that the excess insecticide in the net, which is embedded in it, what we advise is even written on the label. When you open your net, you see a label on it. Apart from do not sell, you also see the label on how to use it. So, but we tell people, once you get this net, the first thing you do is to air it. Air it, not under the sun, under the shade. If you have a place in your house where you have maybe veranda, you know, or if you live in a more natural environment, that you have a tree or something, just air it for about 24 hours. That airing is so that the excess chemical will blow away, so that the ones that will be there will be the one that your body can tolerate. That even if you sleep, for this particular net we are using, I bet you it has been tested, you know, and trusted, and various experiments have been carried out on it. Like I said, people who hardly this time around hear the reports of irritation.
Okay, let's see who is here. Hello, good morning. Hello.
Yeah, good morning, ma'am.
Good morning. Your name and your location, please.
This is Jessica from Abuja.
Huh?
This is Jessica from Abuja.
Okay, Jessica, from where?
Good morning. Yes,
okay.
That is when we collect those mosquito nets and we are told to air them. After airing them sometimes, when it is done, but if you happen to sleep inside it, it still affects you. So now, assuming if you sleep inside the mosquito with your baby, the newborn will be the best attempt to sleep inside the mosquito is sleep inside with your baby. So for you, the adult, you have to encourage to stand that process of the chemical inside that mosquito. But what will happen to the baby if the baby is affected too?
Okay, you asked a question. If you sleep with a baby, please ask that question again. I didn't get the question. I don't know if you're on the... Okay.
Her drift. That is the chemical harmful to the baby, the young,
if you sleep with a baby inside the net.
Yes, the answer is no. Even the first generation nets were not harmful to the baby, but this one is even more enhanced and made safer. there's no way it's harmful to the baby. It's even more beneficial, like I said, because babies, their immune system are still, in fact, malaria control will say that the two group of people that are most vulnerable to malaria, dying from malaria and getting cases of malaria more, are actually children of age under 5 because of pregnant women.
Okay, now tell us to be in Anambra State. You've started on a particular community that will be covered, and we wait for another session.
No, this time around we actually received about 3.8 million nets. As I'm speaking, all those nets have been distributed to not just the local government stores. Most of them have been distributed to what we call distribution hubs, which are closer to the communities. From there, the nets will now move. So there are 4 stages of movement, from the states to local governments, to the hubs, and then to the communities. From there, where it will even be moved further. Okay, hubs are like clusters. Okay. Clusters of spaces that are, because from some LGAs, between some LGAs and some communities are actually far. So from very big LGAs. So what we'll do is that we'll move it to what we call clusters that are closer to the LGAs. From there, most of them are health facilities, primary health facilities, and most of them. Then from there, we'll now move it to where we call distribution points, from which it will be picked to move to houses. So the person that will carry the nets will be moving with the distribution team, going around the houses. Like we say, we started on Sunday. We are going to cover everywhere in the state. We've also planned for riverine areas, because right now we know we're in the peak of rainy season. So we know that some areas, for instance, Anambra West, Obaru, even Ihiala, and maybe some part of Orumba North, some of those areas may be hard to reach. So we made provisions for that. We'll go to some places by road. There are areas that also use canoe. For instance, Anambra West, getting to Olumbanasa area, Nzam, So we're going to, it's going to be a state, like I said, it's a statewide distribution, And we're also going to have, for areas that we didn't cover, we are going to have a few days for mop-up.
Okay, now for our time is fast spent, but for as we wrap up the show, tell us what are the citizens expected to do, that's community members, what they're expected to do, and of course, how to take care of the net. Some people will say that once you wash it, that the potency of the insecticide is no more on the net. So let us know before we wrap up the show.
Okay, so let me start with your first question. It depends on what you wash it with. The net actually is designed in such a way that it can be washed when it's dirty. Especially when you're living in an area that is dusty. Before you know it, because nets we're only distributing one color, which is white. So after a while, even though now it's rainy season, but during dry season, after a while, it will get dirty. So what we advise people to do is to wash it with mild soap, not detergent. Mild soap, because detergent will react with insecticide and may weaken it, make it not to last. The period is supposed to last, designed to last. And then you also ask a question. I didn't get the question before that.
What the members of the community will do.
Yeah, so what they should do, when they come to your houses, we are only giving to people that will meet in the houses. That's why we're even doing it weekends and weekdays. But what we'll do is that we will not give to your neighbor to keep for you. What we'll do, when they come to your house and you are not there, what they do is that they drop a card. We call it a revisit card. That revisit card has a phone number on it. So when you come, you can see that card on your door. It means that your house was missed because you are not there. So what you do, please, take that card, there's a number there, call that card and schedule a revisit with the local government people so that they can come and know when you are at home.
Quickly, is there a particular month or time that you use the net and you say it's expired? You need to change it. How long?
This one we're using now, which is called the PBO net, it has the insecticide lasts for from 3 to 4 years.
Okay, 3 to 4 years.
That's the expiry period, depending on how you use it.
Okay, thank you very much, and that's great having you in the studio, Pharmacist Nonso Ndebe, Program Manager, State Malaria Elimination Program. Thank you so much for coming to explain to us what people are doing with the distribution of insecticide treated nets.
Thank you very much.
And this is where we wrap up the show for this morning. My name is Nonye Nwokoye. Thanks for your time and bye for now.